The funny thing about this book is I bought it the day it was released. Like I pre-ordered this. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I pre-ordered this back in 2018. Again, I still wasn't even reading this or reading in general. And I bought it and I got a chapter or two in it. And if you've read this book, there's homework in it. And every chapter, there's little things that you should do. Well, you have to do if you really want to get everything out of the book. And I remember just some of it being so, at that point in my life, so painful to actually do the work. I put the book away. Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome to another episode of Off the Mat. My name is Josh Dumoulin, and this is
Nicole Stratichuk.
Awesome. And in today's episode, we have a really cool, and actually we were both kind of excited about this one, is we have 3 books that we have chosen each that have made an impact on our lives. So I think I'm pretty excited about this one because, well, again, these are books that have just really made a personal impact on myself or business or in life in general. And I got kind of excited to talk about all of the, about the stories in the book, how they related to me, what difference they made on me. And I was actually, as we were coming in and thinking about it last night, I was really excited about it. There was one, I had a hard time picking my third one because there are just so many good ones that I wanted to go through, but I narrowed it down to these 3 here for myself, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I literally just said to Josh that I had a really hard time picking 3 books. And so I found myself going back and putting different criteria of how I was going to choose my 3 books to share that have made an impact, because I feel like there's been a lot of books that have changed me or helped me learn or helped me grow in different ways. So I'm excited to share with you the 3 that I did come up with for today.
Well, and what's funny is, okay, we've been together for 10 years. And when have you known me to read? Like when we first started together, did I read?
No, not at all. And but in the last couple years, right? It's been a really regular thing for you to be reading. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're learning lots because, the changes that I've seen in you, right? The changes that you've made and how you learned and grown. And so I know, we can learn lots from the different books out there.
And I think, I don't know, I always just gave this, it was just honestly a ridiculous excuse of I'm not a reader. That was just it. It was just, but really when I actually really look back on, when I was younger and, whether, I think I read in high school, I read in high school for book reports and things like that. But after high school, I really didn't read things to learn. And honestly, when I really look on it, it was just pure laziness. I was just too lazy to read. And so it was not, I didn't have time. It wasn't anything about I just can't find the right book. I was just lazy. I was just really lazy.
And my experience has been different because I went to university for 5 or 6 years, I think. And I read a lot during that time, right? Reading textbooks. And I enjoyed that part. I always love learning. So I really enjoyed reading. But there was this time after university when kind of real life started and you have to go out and get a job and work and figure all this out. And I feel like in those few years there, I really fell off reading anything at all. So in the last several years, I have picked up reading again and have read a lot of cool books. And so I'm excited to kind of talk about the ones. And just so you know, we haven't shared with each other yet what 3 books that we chose. So I'm excited about that part.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun to kind of discuss these and just things that, like I said, I've picked up on personally or in business or how I've developed from reading these certain books. So yeah, why don't we get into it? Do you want to start? Do you want to go through your first one?
Sure, I can start. So like I mentioned, there was this time after university that I didn't read a lot. I was busy, right? I'm trying to figure out my career, trying to figure out how to get ahead in life, how to, make money, all of these things, right? I was just busy with that, so I didn't read. But the first book that I did read. I probably read this for the first time, probably read it 10 or so years ago. And then I read it again about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So this book, it really sparked me getting back into reading because I was at that time in my life where, I knew I needed to do something. I needed to grow. I needed to be better. And so this was the book that kind of just started my whole self-development. So this one is a really well-known book. So I picked Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, did I find this book like earth-shattering, like changing? I'm not sure that that's what I thought about this book, but it opened my eyes to see like there is a lot of stuff out there that I can do to improve myself, make me better, make me more effective in whatever I'm trying to achieve. So this book, have you read this book?
No, I haven't read that one yet, no.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I would say this is a really good like first base book if you're looking to, increase your effectiveness or be better or learn what it takes to be successful. These 7 habits are definitely worth reading about and definitely worth learning about. I feel like lots of the other books that I've read all relate back to certain areas of this book. So it is a really good base, broad book to just learn about the habits that are going to make you better. Do you want a quick summary of this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tell me what you thought and then I'd have questions about it.
So the 7 habits, I wrote them down just to make sure I don't mess them up. But the first one is all about being proactive, right? So always thinking ahead. What can you do now to set yourself up for success in the future? It also talks about your personal vision, right? And that's something that we have like worked on a lot for ourselves. Talking about our why, all that kind of stuff. So thinking about what's to come. The second one is all about beginning with the end in mind. And this one, I think, is probably the biggest one for me, is so always beginning with the end in mind. So what's your why, right? This all relates back to your why. And so I've read subsequently other books to do with your why or your purpose or fulfillment. So always beginning with the end in mind because that's going to set your path, right? It's going to set your directory. The third one is put first things first. So sometimes if you've heard that saying, eat your frogs first. So get the hard stuff done, do the hard things, get it done, and be disciplined to do that. Fourth one is think win-win. So everybody wins, right? It's not a win if one person suffers from your success or if someone doesn't get the benefits of your win, right? We want everybody to win. So when we have moved forward with our business or our relationship or our family, it's always thinking win-win. So this book really sets that out. The fifth habit is to seek first to understand and then to be understood. And with this one, I truly believe that I think I constantly need to work on this one, is seeking first to understand. So understand where the other person comes from and then to be understood. But really, do I have to be understood? Not always, right? I just don't think, my biggest thing is I need to seek to understand, but some people may never understand where I'm at, and that's okay, and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't affect the forward relationship. The sixth habit is to synergize. So getting everything working together and working towards the common goal. So things like, you might talk about teamwork and stuff in this one as well. But yeah, bringing everything together. And the seventh habit is sharpen the saw. So always practicing, right? Practice the little things. If we talk about this in like martial arts sense, right? We never stop practicing a punch. We never stop practicing our basic moves, right? Because those are the building blocks to the bigger and better things. There's my really quick summary of the 7 habits. But yeah, all really important habits or practices to have if you want to be successful.
Would you say, like, okay, so you spoke about that fifth one there, seek first and understand, right? Aside from that one, is there any one that really, like, that is like your favorite or go-to, sort of like this one just it resonates with you more?
Definitely begin with the end in mind. We've been talking lots about our why, and I find myself, everything that I'm doing, I'm beginning with the end in mind. Like, what is the end goal? What is the purpose? What does success look like? What do I want to see happen? And I vision that out, right? So I see what I want the end goal to be. So I start with that vision in my mind before going to anything, and then referring back to that, right? Just like our why, always referring back to why we are doing something. Because if you're not strongly connected to that, how are you going to keep going forward, right? Where, discipline is going to get us there, motivation is going to get us there, but we can't be disciplined if we're not bought in and totally believing what that end looks like.
Cool.
All right. There's my number one, 7 Habits. And I really chose this book just because it was a start, 6 years ago. It was the start to just growing more, and this book sparked that. So
cool. All right.
Okay, what's yours?
All right, so this one here, my number one, I have read this I think 3 times now, is called Man Up by Bedros Keuilian. Obviously, I've spoken about Bedros I think a couple times now on the podcast. I'm doing the MDK project in February, but this particular book here is, like I said, I've just read it a few times, and the funny thing about this book is I bought it the day it was released. Like, I pre-ordered this. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I pre-ordered this back in 2018. Again, I still wasn't even reading this or reading in general. And I bought it, and I got a chapter or 2 in it. And if you've read this book, there's homework in it. And every chapter, there's little things that you should do. Well, you have to do if you really want to get everything out of the book. And I remember just some of it being so, at that point in my life, so painful to actually do the work. I put the book away. I probably read 2 chapters of it. I put it away. I just stopped reading it, and I went back to that I'm too lazy to read, or I don't have time. And so I think back in 2020 is when I picked it back up, and obviously I just needed the book at that point in my life. And so with COVID going on, our club, the school was closed down, open and closed. And it was just, I think that's kind of when I picked reading back up and started getting back into that habit again, or starting that habit really. And this was the first one I put back on, and I just attacked it. And I, did every chapter, did the homework for each of them. And I've gone back to it. And yeah, like, you might read the title and you might just think this is only for men. It is totally not. Have you read this one yet?
No, a few times I've flipped through it, but I have not read it cover to cover yet.
Okay, so you should, because it's not just a man up thing. It is for anybody who just really wants to grow in general. So like, I think he's explained it in a podcast before. It's really human up, right? Like just man up, like level up, like just level yourself up. And so this one here, like I said, I have read this one probably 3 times now. I really enjoy it. Yeah, like I said, I bought it day one because I had already been following Bedros for a couple of years at that point. And you talked about got my book coming out, and I went and pre-ordered it at chapters, I think. Got it in, and yeah, I started reading it right away. And yeah, like I said, I got a chapter or 2, and I put it back down. Because I didn't want to do the homework. I just didn't want to. So if you are going to pick this book up, be prepared to do the work, and don't just like read it, like do the work in it. So
I like that point, like do the work. And I think whenever you're reading a self-development or self-help or learning and growing type book, there is work involved. And unless you're willing to do the work, like there's no point in reading the book, because unless you put it into practice, like what benefit did you get out of reading the book?
Exactly. And that's just it. So that's why I just, when I picked it back up, I obviously needed it at that point in my life, and I just went right into it. And like I said, I did the work with it, and then I've done it again. And it's almost interesting to go back to some of the stuff I've probably written. I think some of it I've written in here, some of it I've done on the computer, and notes I've taken. Notes I have in here. Yeah, some of it I've got written in here, and it's funny to go back to some of the things that I wrote that I was afraid of and be like, oh, God, that's what I was afraid of in 2018. No wonder I put this book down. I wasn't even.
You weren't ready to
I wasn't.
read it.
I wasn't ready to read it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's why this one here is probably my favorite, just because it just stuck with me at a point in my life when I needed it. So.
And it's interesting going back to books because, like I said, I've read this 7 Habits probably 3 times, and each time I've read it, something else stands out to me. Something else speaks to me. So whatever point or season of your life that you're in, you're going to pick out what you need to pick out in that time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, so there we go. There's my first one. What's your second one?
Second one. Okay, so the second one I chose, it's called The Alchemist by Paulo, I don't know how to say his last name. I don't know. It's called The Alchemist. This is actually, I think it was first written in Portuguese, but it's been translated all over the world now. And this book is interesting because it's not so directional like, these are the 7 habits. This is how you practice them. It is a story about a boy, and he goes on this journey. And so the main things that I picked up about this book and why I loved it so much was it makes you see that we all have a personal legend. And so that's the wording that they use in this book, that we all have our own personal legend, which could mean purpose or your path. You know, we are all called to do something in our life. And so we have to follow that personal legend or that path if we want to feel fulfilled or happiness or successful, right? We need to follow that personal legend. And so there's these idea around we have a purpose that needs to be fulfilled, and there's like trusting in the universe, right? Whatever that might be, some higher power, whatever that means to you, is that trusting in that, and you need to follow that in order to be fulfilled. So there's also these ideas about trusting in your intuition, which I've come to learn more after reading this book, is like, yeah, trusting your gut, right? And sometimes we do that. And I find sometimes I try and ignore my gut. And I think for quite a few years of my life, I ignored my gut feelings and my, my personal legend that was out there. And another thing that I found that I took out of this book is that our personal legends are personal. They are completely unique. And for me, that was really eye-opening because sometimes we fall into this like comparison game, right? Even between you and I, sometimes I find myself comparing to you. Or there's other women or other humans out there that I aspire to. I find them really awesome. And I'm always comparing myself to them. And this book really made me see that all of our purposes or our personal legends, whatever you want to call it, is so unique. So you can't compare to like me to you or me to someone else. It is all about me and my personal story that I get to create in this one life that I get to live. So that was a really cool idea that I came out of this book with. And then another one is that fear is holding us back. And I know we've talked a lot about fear and things like that, but it ultimately comes down to fear. Fear is holding us back more than anything. And so we have to work through to figure out how we can overcome that fear, take action, take a step forward, and ultimately get up more times than we fall down, right? So this book shows or explains that we all have a personal legend, and it's our job to follow that path or follow that calling so that we can feel happy. But the path is not linear, right? Like it's not like black and white from point A to point B. It is unknown, right? I don't know exactly the path that's going to go out there. So I lean into my intuition. I lean into the universe and believe that there is fulfillment at the end of my path. So following that, and that failure is a part of that path, right? So yeah, we have this fear and we have to understand that there are going to be failures, but failures are just the universe's way of teaching us something and teaching us how to overcome these obstacles that are inevitably going to be in our way. It teaches us how to respond, right? Because we have a choice. Whenever something terrible happens, something stops us in our tracks, something, prevents the action that we were trying to take, or the idea that we had, or the work project that we were trying to do, when something stops us, we have a choice to make. We can proceed, right, with a new plan of action, revise, adjust however we need to, or we shut down, right? Or maybe it's a completely different path, right? So we have that choice of how to respond. We don't have to let these obstacles or failures stop us, right? They are the universe's way of showing us that there's something to learn here and there's a way to respond so that you can keep moving forward towards your personal legend. It also, in this book, it gets you to think about, like I said, like trusting in the universe. So paying attention to those signs, leaning into your intuition and following that so that you can fulfill your purpose or your personal legend. And then the last thing, I already said it, but rise more times than you fall. So if you fail 7 times, get up 8. There's a quote about that, right? Fall down 7 times, get up 8. That is the thing. If we believe that your personal legend, make time to connect with that, and that will drive you forward, and have that mindset that no matter how many times we fail or, encounter an obstacle, that we're going to get back up. I think that is a good summary of the book. And it's all about a story of a boy that is traveling to Egypt, and he goes through a bunch of stuff. And I really didn't talk about the story at all, but those are the things that you kind of learn about and come to understand and trust in.
Cool. I feel like I got the whole book there.
You didn't, though, because I didn't even talk about the book. I didn't even actually talk about what happens in the book. So it is actually a really good read because it does explain it in a story way that is easy to understand, right?
Yeah, I haven't read too many story ones, so I'll have to check that one out. That one's been on our shelf you've had it for a bit?
Yeah, quite a few years, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. I'll have to check that one out.
What's your second book?
So my second one here is Relentless by Tim Grover. And this one here we bought in 2021. 2021, we bought it in September, and I bought 12 copies of this. I bought 12 copies for each of our team here at Champion. So I got one for anybody who teaches or assists or does anything here at the school. We bought 11 copies, and I read through this one here quick. I powered through this one here. And this one here was just a great one because Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's coach. He and I don't mean team coach. He was his personal one-on-one trainer. And he worked a lot on his head and just really getting, him dialed in physically and mentally. And the whole book is amazing. And it talks about these 3 types of people. You have the coolers, you have the cleaners, and you have the closers. The coolers, the closers, and the cleaners. And it goes through each one of those and what sort of personality traits they are. The coolers are these kind of people who I think do the bare minimum. The cleaners, the closers are I can't remember exactly, but the closers, you're kind of in that middle range. You do as much as you can, but you kind of more when it's convenient for you. And then the cleaner just does whatever it takes, whenever it takes, at any time. And he talks mostly about how the athletes that he's trained, like Michael Jordan, were cleaners. It didn't matter if he was sick, if he was ill, if he was sore, if he was tired. He had a job to do, and he went there, and that's all that mattered. And he did whatever it took because he had a duty and an obligation. He talks about in certain chapters about how, Michael Jordan would, this could be the only time that a kid in, whatever city he's playing in has the opportunity to come and watch Michael Jordan play. So I could be sick, I could be tired, I could be exhausted, but I am going to go out there. I'm going to score as many baskets as I can. I'm going to play as hard as I can, because the people who come to see me, that could be their only time in their entire life that they have the opportunity to come and see me. And so he talks a lot about just what it takes to be a cleaner. And the whole thing is awesome. And like I said, I read through this one really quickly. Like every morning, I would wake up extra early just so I had more time to read through this one here. Didn't take me very long, and that's saying a lot because I don't read very fast. I'm actually quite a slow reader. So, and sometimes I find myself having to go back to read through certain things again, because maybe I just needed to pick up some more of it. And yeah, this is an awesome book. This is not my copy. I think my copy...
that's my copy.
That's your copy. I think my copy has crease marks in it everywhere, because I have folded through and taken notes, and maybe you have too. You've taken some notes here as well.
There's some notes in there.
Yeah. So anyway, this one here, I just really enjoyed it. And Tim Grover, he was just awesome. Didn't you get to see... Did you go...
No, I was at a conference that he was attending, that same conference the next year.
Oh, okay. So
I missed him, but yeah, I learned, or I saw all about it, that he was there, and yeah, I got to meet with people.
So this one here, if you have a chance to read Relentless, he's also got another one I have not read called Winning. Right. That's his, I believe that's the second one, but pick up Relentless, read through that one, and if you want to know what it takes to be a cleaner, this here really goes through it. And there's a few chapters in particular. It was called, I wanted to dig it out because there's a few chapters that really rang like heavy on me, but really you have a dark side that refuses to be taught to be good. And page 81, and it talks all about your dark side, and that we all have one. And we might sit there and think that we're better than certain people, but we all have a dark side. We all have something in us that, we're ashamed of or guilty of, and it definitely doesn't hold back on this stuff here. The whole book does not hold back. So if you would just really want to just go into a book here, I mean, look at the title here, Relentless, From Good to Great to Unstoppable. So this one here, worth reading. This is on my to read again, because I enjoyed it that much.
Yeah, I'm actually... just bringing it up because I have read it once. Now that you're bringing it up, it makes me want to read it again, because there's so many lessons in there, right? And just like I said, like sometimes going back to the books, you'll pick up on the things that you need at that time. Mm-hmm. And when you come back to it, you're going to pick up on something else. So actually, I think this is a good time to reread this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. All right. So for our third one here, now apparently we picked the same one because you had been looking for this book here, and I, of course, had it. So
yeah,
it's funny.
At home.
This was one that we both chose, and this one is called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And this one here is a really good book. This one here, same thing. I powered through this one. This one here, we only have one copy, right? I read it and then you read it. Okay, right. So this one here is littered with fold marks, so I could go back to pages and highlighter marks for certain stories. And the one thing that I really enjoyed about it, and I think that we both enjoyed about it, is it goes through a story that happened in war, and then a story, how they relate it to, I think, their personal, and then how they relate it to business. So when you read each one, you get that, this happened to us here, this is what we learned from it, and this is how we put it into business. And it's like, man, when it came to like learning about accountability and like actually taking responsibility for every single thing in my life, this was it here. Extreme ownership.
That's right. And I like the word extreme because I feel like the examples, the war stories, are extreme examples, because these are human lives on the line that these two guys, Jocko and Leif, took responsibility for. And when they can do that, I can definitely take some responsibility and some ownership for the things in my life. Because
absolutely.
I am not in war. So that's why this book is so powerful, is because they take extreme ownership in the middle of war where human lives are being lost. And, my respects to them, because it made me kind of turn off my little bitch inside, because the things that I'm experiencing, the things that I get upset about, the things that I get discouraged about, I can human up and take some ownership of those things in my life, because I'm not in that extreme situation. So why am I letting myself just be awful
Yeah.
and not take responsibility for things?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I just think back to like certain things, like, when it comes to how I've developed, as an instructor, and, sometimes I would put, if somebody couldn't teach a certain way, it was like, it was never my fault. It was always theirs. But it was like, really, this one here made me think back to every awful class I've ever taught myself. Mm-hmm. And like when a student is like, either, not behaving in a certain way, or the class itself didn't go the way, it used to be someone else's fault. It used to be the class's fault. Oh, they came in, and everybody was this, and that student set this off. But it was like, no, like it was my fault, like everything. And so now anytime, anything doesn't go exactly the way I thought it would, or want it to go, I really can go back to like, okay, what can I do? What did I do? What didn't I do? Like, what did I miss? So.
Right. And when we're talking about it in like a teamwork environment or a work environment, right, it changed the way that I acted towards my team members, whether that's in, I had a career in human resources. So whether it was in that or in, our business now, I changed the way that I responded, because if someone wasn't understanding my idea, right, that's my fault. Mm-hmm. I didn't present it the right way. I didn't allow them the opportunity to buy into it, right? And this goes back to the 7 habits too, is seek first to understand, right? So you need to understand the other members before they can understand you. And so when it comes to that teamwork work environment, right, it changed the way that I thought about things or the way that I approach things, because when I am able to take ownership over those things, it just changes your outlook. It changes your process. Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely. And this is, like I said, I think anybody could enjoy this one here. Like, you don't have to be in business. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to, like, I think anybody could read this and just really enjoy the whole, like, everything around it.
Exactly, because I even think about this in terms of being a mom as a parent, right? When my kid's misbehaving, or my kid is doing this or doing that, or not motivated or not excited or misbehaving or crying or throwing a fit or whatever, I don't blame them. I now look back at what I'm doing and how I'm presenting myself to them, or how I'm teaching them how to behave, right? I'm their mom. I'm their parent. Who are they learning from, right? So all of those kind of behaviors that you get from your kids, well, I haven't done enough to teach them the right way to respond to the things that are upsetting them, right? I mean, yeah, so you don't necessarily have to be a business owner or, in the work world. It can just be for applying these concepts to your own personal life in family, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, those are my 2. Those are your 2, and we had a shared third one that we didn't even know about. So
what's funny about this book is I belong to a book club, and our book club meets once a week, and we've been meeting for 3 years now, once a week. And I've brought this book up to them a few different times. Finally, we are starting this book as part of book club, so I get to read it again.
Cool. Well, you'll enjoy it. They'll enjoy it. You will enjoy it. Any one of these ones here, Man Up by Bedros Keuilian, Relentless by Tim Grover, and Extreme Ownership by Jocko and Leaf. And of course,
The Alchemist and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Cool. I've got a bonus one here because, we do talk to a lot of parents, and I did want to include a book that we have gotten for Ryder to read through, and he's read this one, I think, twice. I think he's reading the 5th one right now.
What's funny is that I thought about putting this book on my list too.
That's awesome. So this one here is Way of the Warrior Kid. This is another Jocko Willink book, and this one here is, Jocko wrote this one here, and he wrote this one for kids. And like Ryder, who is 9, I think we got it for him when he was around 7, and it is all about a kid who, you know, is bullied. He's weak. He has no confidence. Right. And his uncle comes to live with him for the summer, and he's a Navy SEAL. And of course,
teaches him these life lessons.
The Way of the Warrior Kid.
Yeah.
And this one here, if your child is looking for a book, like, listen, there's a few books. There's a couple of these ones here that, you know, I know Ryder's into, but like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I can't handle that one. That one is ridiculous. But these ones here, they set a unbelievable example for kids, and just,
I think our values and beliefs are so reflected in this book. That's why we enjoy it so much. And so we want to raise a strong, confident, respectable young men, because Rocky's getting to the age where we can almost start reading to them, or to Rocky as well. But this book reflects those beliefs and values that we have. And so it's just another source for Ryder to hear the same things that we say, but from someone else.
And it's cool because when we got this one, we were reading to him. Like, we were still reading to him. He wasn't reading on his own. Yeah. So we read him this one. I think, like I said, I think we've read it to him. I think he's now read it, but he is now reading on his own the 5th one. So this is the first one, Way of the Warrior Kid. Then there's the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th one is it's a field manual. It's a bigger. It's a lot bigger one, and it's about Mark, who's now writing the path of being a warrior kid. And the 5th one is stories that Uncle Jake is Mark's. Mark is the main character, and Uncle Jake is the uncle who comes to live with him.
The coolest thing I like about these books is, you know, as parents, we're trying to steer our young men on this path, right? But this book really talks to the kids and gets them to realize that they are in charge of their path too.
Yes.
And just makes it so apparent to them that, you know, these are the choices that you can make. These are the things that you can do. And Uncle Jake is just so good at giving that to the boy, right? And so the boy gets to realize, like, wow, my Uncle Jake is pretty smart. And so if I do some of these things, these are the consequences, or, you know, the good things that come out of those actions, right?
Even as a parent, I enjoyed reading it with him, because even when you look at the example that Uncle Jake sets for Mark, you go like, well, what kind of example can I make sure that I am setting for Ryder, you know, the Mark and the Uncle Jake of our own little world, or whatever, if you will, if we're writing that kind of story too for our son. That is exactly, you know, do I want to show him that, you know, dad does what it takes? Well, right, then I better be able to show him exactly those things.
So it's just been a really good reinforcement of our beliefs and values for our whole family. You know, a really good example for Ryder to see, and to see what Uncle Jake is all about, and a really good reminder for us to be the best parents that we can be.
That's right. Yeah. So that was my secret bonus book. This one is more for, again, this one is for your kids. These ones are going to be for you. Man Up, Relentless, Extreme Ownership, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The Alchemist, and Way of the Warrior Kid. Go pick up those books. They are great. You will not regret them. My big thing now when I read is just read a book. Well, is it good? Read it. Like, read it. You'll get something from them. So read away. Thank you guys. Anyway, and there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Off the Mat. My name is Josh Dumoulin, and this is
Nicole Stratichuk.
Thank you guys so much. If you guys did enjoy this episode, please don't forget to leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, and just, you know what, share it to anybody who also might enjoy some of these books.
Or drop us a line on your top 3 books, because we're interested in adding to our reading list. So maybe you've got a good one for us to read.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you guys next time.